My grandma pretty much raised me Catholic, which meant she dragged me to church every Sunday, kicking and screaming. I didn't like it. I didn't want to be a part of it. It wasn't my thing. Really, I was into computers and I was into sports. And in high school, I was recruited, flown to Washington, D.C., and I got pitched by a bunch of three-letter agencies, FBI, DEA, other agencies.
My guest today is Steve Gatena, the founder of pray.com. Steve is an American entrepreneur, NCAA champ, and the youngest advisor to the President of the United States to be appointed to the National Infrastructure Advisory Council. So basically, he's a huge legend. Steve serves also as the founder of pray.com, which is the world's #1 app for daily prayer and faith-based audio content. So I like to think of it as like a calm.com or an Audible for prayer. Steve, welcome to the show.
Matt, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited that I get to be your first guest here on the Matt Gray Show.
There we go. Stoked to have you here. So, Steve, you are one of the people, I was doing a lot of reflection in 2022, just, some of my favorite experiences, some of my favorite people, and you came up on the list multiple times. We had some great times there in LA at the Mastermind, and I've learned a ton from you through our experiences in Founder OS and a bunch of other things. So super grateful for you and would love to have you just share a bit about your story and your journey kind of founding Pray, because I think it's a fascinating one.
Thanks. Yeah, you know what? Of all of the surprises in 2022 that were pleasant surprises, this dude named Matt Gray flying out from Canada to come hang out with some buddies of mine in LA at Eric Sue's Leveling Up event. I think that was definitely my top 5 of surprises. So thank you for coming. I know we didn't even really know each other that well. And I felt like you were such a smart and passionate and kind entrepreneur. And I was like, you know what? I got to connect with Matt and I'm going to invite him to this thing. So I called Eric and was like, hey, dude, I'm bringing my buddy. Is that cool? And yeah, it worked out. It was so fun. It was so much fun.
That event was legendary. Got a lot out of it.
So my background, Matt, if I were to take it back all the way to diapers, which is really where I like to start. I was born to a single Jewish mom on welfare. So my mom is Jewish and my dad was Catholic. And I bring that up when I tell the story because it turned out that God's plan for my life was that I would be the pray.com guy, right? So anytime you start off as the pray.com guy, now we're introducing religion and people tend to make a lot of assumptions anytime you do that. But to clarify any assumptions, I'm from a mixed family. My mom's Jewish. My dad's Catholic. My grandma pretty much raised me Catholic, which meant she dragged me to church every Sunday, kicking and screaming. I didn't like it. I didn't want to be a part of it. It wasn't my thing. Really, I was into computers and I was into sports. And in high school, I was recruited, flown to Washington, D.C., and I got pitched by a bunch of three-letter agencies, FBI, DEA, other agencies. And they basically said, hey, here's how you could use computers in the government. And one of the people from one of the agencies showed me something that we would now call Google Earth today, except back then, Google Earth didn't exist. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever, that you could just take pictures of the Earth from outer space. And I said, hey, I want to do this. This is what I want to do when I grow up. How do I do this? And the guy said, well, one way is you could go to the United States Naval Academy, Annapolis. Another way is you could go to the United States Air Force Academy. And so I decided to go to the United States Air Force Academy out of high school and major in computer science. I did that because I wanted to work with satellites. I didn't want to fly fighter jets. I wanted to work with satellites. And I thought satellite imaging was just the coolest. So went to the Air Force Academy. And my first year there, Matt, I dislocated my shoulders, collapsed my lung, broke my hand, got pneumonia, and ended up with an honorable discharge.
There we go. Sounds a little eventful.
It was a little eventful. And I think that, that was the first time that I learned that God's plan for my life was not my plan for my life. And I think that a lot of us have been in that position before.
I feel like
But
that's how it goes, right? We have plans and God laughs at them.
That's it, right? So like, story of my life. So yeah, I mean, fortunately I'm 6'5". I used to be 310 pounds. Today I'm like 210. Actually, my wife would be like, she'd tell me I'm 220 and I need to lose 10 pounds. But yeah, I was 310. I got to play football in college, as you mentioned. Won a Rose Bowl at the University of Southern California with Coach Pete Carroll. I was a left tackle. So yeah, I had a blast playing football. Wanted to go to the NFL, thought that was a possibility. And my senior year of college, I actually ended up with 2 fully reconstructed shoulders. And coming back after that, I really wasn't strong enough to go to the NFL. I just kind of had maxed out my body and taken my athletic career as far as I could go. But USC is a great school. I took an entrepreneurship class, and the first day of the entrepreneurship class, my teacher said, think of a business that couldn't exist 5 years ago that would boom 5 years from now. I said, there should be a company that makes professional YouTube videos for corporations. And my teacher said, what's YouTube? So to give you an idea, YouTube was brand new, Matt. And this was like 2008. And actually YouTube had just got acquired by Google, but like it wasn't everywhere yet. People weren't using it yet. People weren't running around with like iPhones yet. And I started that as a company while I was in school. That was my first company. And it turned into a production company. By the time I graduated in 2010, I was building out the online video channels for Red Bull, Amgen, Marriott, Mattel, Los Angeles Dodgers. And I pretty much spent my 20s becoming a producer and making these YouTube videos, like doing crazy stuff, like taking Steve Aoki, throwing him out of an airplane, right? And like trying to have him drink Red Bull or something. So it was just like stuff like that.
Just normal days.
Just normal days, right? And so like you can imagine, right? You're in your 20s. I didn't go to like film school or anything. So I'm just like learning on the fly how to be a producer and working with these Fortune 500 companies to make their online content. And it was a blast. And that's where I learned how to become a producer or a creator. It's where I learned how to become an entrepreneur. It's where I learned how to become a business person. And yeah, that was pretty much my entire 20s. I ended up selling that company in 2015. I became the CEO of the world's largest aerial production company. So we filmed all the major motion pictures and TV shows from helicopters. So Mission Impossible, Transformers, CSI, stuff like that. And we also did aerial surveillance. So we did confidential surveillance missions for FBI, DEA, foreign governments, municipalities, and we did air medical transport. So patients and organs, hospital to hospital. And on September 11th, 2015, my business partner died in a plane crash outside Medellin, Colombia.
Wow.
Yeah. So to give you an idea of where I was at, just kind of like personally, right?
Yeah.
29, CEO of this multinational helicopter company. And my business partner, the founder and CEO of the company, dies. And like literally where I was at is I was in Westlake Village, California at a Four Seasons hotel in a boardroom running a senior leadership team meeting. So it was Friday, September 11th. And I get this phone call. We're almost done with the day. It was 4:53 p.m. This weird phone number is calling my cell. I knew I had to pick it up because of the kind of work that we did. And I pick up the phone and the person said, Steve, Alan's plane crashed. And when you're in aviation, you know that means fatalities. So I'm like standing in this hallway, right? Just got this call. The entire team is on the other side of the hall in this big boardroom. And Matt, I had no idea what to do. I didn't have like some kind of blueprint. I didn't have some framework. There was no crisis communication plan, nothing.
Here's an utter shock.
Yeah. And the only thing I could do was I just looked up and was like, please God, help me get through this. And I wasn't religious or anything, right? I'm not I hated going to church, right? That was not my jam. Mm-hmm. And we got through the next 72 hours. It was super high profile. So I had to address the press, ABC, NBC, TMZ. And then I'm driving to work on Monday and literally, again, just had no idea what to do. Just had no clue. Like, am I supposed to bring the whole company together and like talk to everybody and give a big speech? If I do give a speech, how am I supposed to sound? Am I supposed to be like optimistic? Am I supposed to be sad? Like, how much of the details do I talk about to the company versus like what stays private for his family? Like, I had no idea. And so I'm sitting on the 101 freeway on the way from my house in Westlake down to Van Nuys Airport where our HQ was. And I hit YouTube and I start watching some Tony Robbins videos because I'm like, I don't know, like what would like Tony Robbins do, right? Because he helps people get through all kinds of challenging stuff. And he's like this guy, he's like advised presidents. I'm like, all right, let me get some like Tony Robbins. And then I hit my little Apple books and I'm like downloading like Tony Robbins audiobook and I'm listening to this stuff on the way to work. And, you know, I went in and basically like during this time period, I'm listening to like Tony Robbins. And I like downloaded some like Oprah stuff. Like she's got this like Super Soul Sunday series, right? I'm like listening to this Oprah podcasts. And eventually a friend of mine says, you know, he asked me, hey, what are you doing? And I was like, and like, I knew that he kind of meant like, how are you doing? But really he was getting more specific. Like, what am I doing to care for myself as I'm going through this time in my life? And I basically told him, I'm like, I'm listening to like some Tony Robbins. I'm doing some Soul Cycle. I'm drinking green juices. I'm hitting Bikram yoga, right? Like all the hippie woo-woo California stuff. And he was like, hey, you should listen to this podcast from my pastor. And I was like, pastor? Isn't that like a fake priest? You know, they can like get married and have kids. Like, I'm not one of these Jesus people, bro. Like, I don't know about this like pastor thing.
You got the wrong guy.
Yeah, dude, you got the wrong guy, bro. You got the wrong guy. And he was like, dude, you're listening to like some Oprah Super Soul Sunday audiobooks. Don't be like criticizing my pastor's podcast. You know what I mean?
Shots fired.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, I'll listen to it. Send it to me. And it's like this random guy from some place called like Flower Mound, Texas, wherever that is. I've never been there, you know? He's like not a famous guy.
Shout out to Flower Mound. Shout out to Flower Mound.
Yeah, huge shout out to Flower Mound. This like random dude named Matt Chandler. Like, who is this guy? Like, why am I listening to this? You know, this podcast changed my life. And this guy, Matt Chandler, and what he was talking about, I thought it totally wasn't for me. The title of the podcast was The Peace That Jesus Brings. I was like, this is like super hokey. Dude, not hokey. Like totally. It was the
medicine you needed.
It was exactly what I needed. And it was transformative to me. It was transformative to me mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And so I started listening to these podcasts every day on the way to work and on the way home. And this guy, I still never met him, this Matt Chandler guy, was like basically a pastor to me during this whole season of my life. And that's really where the seed of the idea for pray.com was planted, Matt. Like I went so deep into these podcasts during this time of my life. And eventually I was like, how come I never knew about this? How come I totally misjudged what this was? Like I was super biased, right? I'm from LA. I thought I was like the most open-minded, you know what I mean? And yeah, I just, the only conclusion that I could come to was there was no digital destination for faith content. We have a digital destination for sports content, ESPN. How come there's no digital destination for faith content? Like we have this cool, like millennial brand for like bad stuff called Vice, right? And it's like super popular. How come there's no like cool millennial brand for good stuff called Pray and it's super popular? That's really why I started pray.com. I felt like there was this need in the world. I was a customer, right? I was somebody that consumed this content. And also I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a media entrepreneur, now a tech media. And I was like, dude, this is God's plan for my life. I got to go start this thing. And it sounded amazing. Crazy even to me at the time, Matt, because I'm not somebody that grew up in a church. My dad is not a pastor. I don't have a degree in theology.
So that was the breakthrough. And then you fast forward to today and you've got 20 million people and growing on this platform. and you're the number one prayer platform in the world. I know you just recently also launched a podcast, Bible in a Year, which is quickly, I remember we were chatting one day, you were thinking of launching it, and a month later, it must have been, you were already number one on Spotify, 2.5 million downloads in its first month. I don't think I've ever met someone that's been able to do something, not only implement something so fast, but implement it so fast, execute on it, and have that sort of meteoric growth, seemingly out of nowhere. What was kind of the impetus between starting that podcast, and where are you trying to take things?
So I would say, like, first and foremost, I'm just so grateful to be able to be the CEO of pray.com. Like, I'm just so grateful for this opportunity to be in the driver's seat. And if I told you that I had like some secret special framework or secret master plan, I would be lying. Like, I really believe that this is God's plan for me. So like, all the credit, all the glory, right, I would give to God. And that's like my starting point. Next step, I would say that I have been fortunate to be surrounded by incredible people. I have been absolutely blessed with these incredible co-founders that I have. There's 4 of us that started the company. I have 3 co-founders, Mike Lynn, Ryan Beck, and Matt Potter, people that I've known for over a decade. Ryan and I grew up together. He was my childhood friend. So I have these great co-founders, right? And then I have these incredible investors. Praise this venture-backed Delaware C Corp. We have investors like Greylock, TPG, Sequoia, Founders Fund, all these awesome, intelligent, brilliant Silicon Valley people that I get to talk to and that I get access and advice from. And then on top of that, I have these amazing friends and mentors. Like, Matt Gray is my friend, and you're a mentor to me. I learned so much from you, right? I have a buddy named Lewis Howes. He really was the guy that kind of encouraged me to go get into the podcasting. I was talking to him about it just like casually because I really like Lewis Howes' podcast. He's got a School of Greatness podcast. It's incredibly inspiring. I'm like, dude, you're like the millennial Oprah. And I'm like, I'm all about it. And he's like, hey, you should do a podcast. And so Lewis kind of like spoke into me and planted the seed of like doing that. And you know me, Matt, like, I'm always hitting you up for advice on like, how do I build a personal brand? Should I build a personal brand? And really, I don't want to build a personal brand. Like, I'm kind of like anti being in front of the camera or like big personal brand, right? So when Lewis was like, hey, there's a big podcast opportunity, the way my brain works is like, oh, cool. What podcast can I produce? Because like, my core competency from YouTube days is I'm a producer. I'm not the talent. I'm not in front of the camera. What podcast can I produce that I would want to consume? I landed on Bible in a Year, right? So if you go to BibleInAYear.com, you can hear the podcast. And I was like, yeah, I want a Bible in a Year podcast that feels like a cinematic audio experience. I want a Bible in a Year podcast that feels like that Matt Chandler guy from Flower Mound, Texas, plus Game of Thrones had a baby, right? That's what I want. That's the Bible in a Year podcast I want. I don't want like some boring guy. Like, no offense to all the other Bible in a Year people. The person reading the Bible format doesn't work for me. That doesn't work for me, right? I want something that's like the Marvel universe of like Bible in a Year. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like entertainment, right? Like Hollywood, like give me like explosions, action packed, right? There's a lot going on in the Bible. So the Bible in a Year podcast was what I got hooked on. And we produced that out. We got this incredible pastor from Dallas, Texas, a guy named Jack Graham, to be in it. And we have some incredible voiceover artists that narrate the stories. And that's what we rolled with. And we launched Bible in a Year in October. And, you know, our projection, our high case was like a couple million downloads for the year. And so for us to come out and blow it out and do like 2.5 to 3 million downloads in the first month, then hit number 1, that was that was epic. Like, I was so stoked on that. The team was stoked. Jack Graham was super pumped. Like, everybody that worked on the project, we had these like incredible writers and like pastors that are helping us write, and composers. This guy named Andrew Morgan Smith that's like composing all the music. People were pumped. And so
that's amazing.
Yeah, it was cool.
Well, congrats. No, I mean, it was, it's amazing to see the rise of it so fast. I'm excited for the vision. You touched on one thing there that I'm really big on and that I think is really fascinating, whether it's been with the cannabis space, with Herb, or with operating systems with Founder OS. I'm really big on this idea of like edutainment, building content that's like 50% education for that space, but then 50% entertainment. And it sounds like when you were approaching Bible in a Year, you had that kind of approach to, you know, combining, as you put it, like this Marvel universe with Bible in a Year, to give it just that like extra like pizzazz, that zest, that just entertainment value that would then suck people into like the amazing information and, you know, spiritual experience that Bible in a Year is. I'm curious, like, how do you bridge those worlds between the, you know, what is like Bible in a Year, but then making that super entertainment? Do you have a way at which you look at that?
Yeah, I just, you know, when you think about entertainment, especially when it comes to anything scripted, the magic starts in the script. Like, you need a miraculous story for people to like feel it, right? Whether they're like sitting in the theater or whether they're listening to it on their phone. It's all about the script and the writing. And we're blessed to have the Bible, right? You have this scripture that's been around for a couple thousand years, and it's got the world's best stories as measured by any metric, like any metric that you could invent to like quantify what is the best stories on earth. It's always the Bible, like book sales, most amount of people that have read it, like most amount of people, or most amount of like vignettes from the stories that people know about, right? Most amount of wisdom and lessons. And we have this Bible, right? Which I believe is the word of God, right? And people who aren't a Christian would probably just say, you know, incredible book of wisdom. But either way, unanimously, people tend to agree, best stories, best stories. So that's the framework that we get to start from. From there, it's super important to me as somebody that is not a theologian. I'm not a pastor. I don't have a PhD in theology, that we write stories that are biblically accurate. So we work with writers that do have degrees in theology, that are pastors. And we start by writing out all these stories in a way that they're theologically accurate. And then from there, we start to entertainify them, right? We start to add in, you know, maybe there wasn't a sound of a bone breaking, or there wasn't the crackling of a fire, or there wasn't the, you know, gust of wind. And we start to add in the little tiny details and little tiny elements throughout the story. And all of that, it really starts in the writing process. So anytime you're going to go and you're going to make an entertainment product, it really just starts in the writing. I don't care if it's like a musical. I don't care if it's a movie. I don't care if it's a book. Like, the magic starts on pen and paper. And that's really where it starts.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that writing's truly a superpower, and storytelling is very much like a vehicle for transformation. And it's amazing to see how many lives that Bible in a Year is likely transforming. And yeah, it all comes down to like the pen and the paper, and, you know, what are those stories? And there's no better source to that than the Bible. So you're dealing with some good material there, obviously. In terms of I know one part to like the growth of these things is obviously, you know, the writing, and that's one piece of it. You know, having gotten to know you a little bit, I've always kind of continually wowed by your network. You know, I know you're a longtime member of YPO. We met partly in person at a mastermind in LA. Shout out Eric Sue and Hormozy and Cody Sanchez and everyone that was there. I'm curious, like, how do you find mentors in your life? because you've obviously accumulated an incredible network. And who are some of the biggest mentors in your life?
Oh man, I am, I would say for the people that know me really well, if you were to ask them, like, what are 3 qualities that describe me? One of them would be relentlessly committed. Like, I'm like relentless. They're like, dude, this guy is like, once he's committed to something, he's either going to die trying or he gets there, like one of the two, you know? So like that quality, there's a lot of friction when that's one of your like core traits of who you are. Another quality people would use to describe me is probably like extraordinarily confident. Like I don't really hesitate at things that I want to go do. It doesn't really matter if other people are doing them, if other people aren't doing them. I just kind of do what I want to do. And I'm really confident in my choices. And the last one, which really ties into the mentoring, is I'm a very curious person. I am super curious. So when I meet people, it turns into me just asking questions constantly. I want to learn. I want to know who you are. I want to find out what your interests are. What are your hobbies? I'm a curious cat. And I think that has been the thing that has opened the door for me to mentorship. I believe mentorship is so incredibly important. A majority of the things that you will ever want to do in your life have already been done at an elite level by someone else. A majority. Not all, but like a majority. And so what if you could just get somebody who's already been to where you want to go to help you out, right?
100%. I think it's the biggest hack.
It's the biggest hack. It's the biggest hack. And for me, that hack comes from a natural and authentic place of the fact that I'm just curious about people.
Yep.
Like when I connect with people, I'm not trying to get them to help me. I'm actually just wanting to know who they are. And then there's usually some kind of natural attraction or there's not. One of the people that, has been a really great mentor to me has been a guy named Mike Jones. He's actually on the board of pray.com. He's the founder of Science, former CEO of MySpace. Mike has mentored me up all throughout the process of building a venture-backed. I didn't know anything about tech when I got started. I didn't know how to make software. I didn't know how to run sprints. I didn't know how to do customer discovery. Like I've learned all this stuff from Mike Jones, and he's been a true blessing in my life. There's other people that I also get to mentor and pay it forward to. Our buddy Jimmy May, right, who just retired from the United States Navy SEALs. Jimmy and I connected. We're just friends, right? We got connected through some mutual friends. And Jimmy said, hey, I'm going to be retiring in like 3 to 5 years. And I think I want to start a business and maybe a nonprofit. I'm not sure. Can you help me out? Right. And so for me, as somebody that started multiple companies, I'm like, yeah, like what a great way to be able to give back, right? To be able to share my knowledge. So I think that the cool thing about mentorship is it goes both ways, right? You can go seek out mentors and you can be a mentor. And I think that we really develop the most as people when we do both. And I would consider you a mentor, Matt. You're a mentor of mine. You know all about personal branding, copywriting, like you understand this stuff that for me has been an area where I'm not an expert. So to be able to find you and be like, just learn who you were. You had this whole approach where it was like, you were this soulful entrepreneur. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't just, I want to make a bunch of money and get rich quick. And it also wasn't just money is evil. Like let's spend like our whole life on a mountaintop doing like a meditation retreat. You had this blend. And for me, that was perfect, right? I was like, oh, this guy gets it. Like he's margin and mission, right? He's profit and purpose. Like he's bringing a soul to entrepreneurship. And that's really where I feel like I'm coming from too. And so that's why I was so pumped to connect with you. And then when we had the opportunity to do that event together, like Eric Sue and I have been friends for probably like 15 years when we both went into EO. And that must have been in like, I don't know, 2009 or 10. It was like, actually, it must have been 11 because I had already graduated school. But, we both joined EO. We were like the youngest people in EO. And Eric reached out to me and was like, hey, bro, like, let's start hanging out more. And I was like, okay, cool. And, fast forward like 12 years later, we're both doing YPO together. And Eric's got this leveling up component that's a side thing for him because he likes to mentor people and he likes to get mentored by people, right? So I've really learned from people like Eric how you can start to build mentorship communities. I never really thought of it like a formalized thing. And I've really learned from YPO and EO how those communities of like peer learning, peer mentorship are super valuable. But, I naturally, because I'm such a curious dude, I naturally kind of always went down this path of wanting to know more about people, wanting to help people, wanting to learn from people.
That's awesome. I mean, yeah, I'm really big on mentorship. And I think that, like you were saying, it is the ultimate hack. I mean, if you're trying to be successful in any given area, the quickest way to get to where you're trying to go is to learn from people that have already been there. And likewise, too, it's one of the most rewarding experiences you can have, too, when you kind of can pay it forward to the next generation of people that are looking to get where you are. In terms of on the community side with Pray, you have a massive community of people, and it's not just worshipers and parishioners. It's the priests, pastors. It's a huge network of people. And I've oftentimes reflected on, the church itself. It's like the ultimate community. Just like the Bible is just like the ultimate book. And the ultimate storytelling. And so, you have these like weekly rituals, you have these daily habits, you have people coming together regularly. There's a common book that they're all celebrating. I'm curious, when you're approaching sort of the next 10 years of Pray and where you're trying to go with this community, how do you kind of think about your kind of community systems and playbook?
Matt, what's the first thing that you do when you wake up in the morning?
The first thing I do when I wake up in the morning, I typically meditate.
Okay. And for me, I pray. So we're in that same space, right? And if you survey monkeyed planet Earth, right, all like 7.6 billion people or like whatever the number is that we're at, and you said, hey, what's the first thing that you do when you wake up in the morning? Billions of people, billions, would reply, that's the first thing. And so the cue that I take from that is make prayer the priority. So prayer is the main thing for us. That's the foundation, right? And we have to always keep the main thing. Prayer, just like meditation, right, can happen alone, single player mode, right? If we're doing video game terms. And it can also, you can do group prayer, right? You can have multiplayer mode. So when we talk about community, right, we're talking about multiplayer mode. What are all of the multiplayer mode things that we can do? So for us at pray.com, prayer is a priority. We keep that the main thing. And then as we branch out into other, for us, it's features of our app, right? Because we're an app. As we branch out into features, we start thinking of what are all of the multiplayer mode features, right? Group prayer text, prayer calls. There's a thing called prayer calls. I was on one today with my YPO Christian network where literally everybody calls in on a phone and we pray for each other. So, there's all of these features that you can build out around the healthy habit of prayer. So you asked about my playbook. I know we share an incredible friend, Greg, right? Who is the community expert, community master. Dude knows all the features for community products. He has a playbook and he has a very meticulous and detailed process for how he likes to build community products. For me, I don't have a playbook. For me, it's make prayer the priority. And then as we think about single player mode features versus multiplayer mode features, what are the next feature sets that we can easily help people use an app for? Whether that's a prayer call, whether that's a group prayer chain, like a text thread, etc.
That's awesome. So yeah, I mean, I do think that is one of the most difficult things whenever you're building a company is distractions, and they say that most startups die from indigestion, not starvation. And there's always so many different opportunities that oftentimes it's so easy to get lost in what you're really all about. And I think that what separates the most successful entrepreneurs from the rest is that sort of laser focus on what is the most important thing in your company. And so for Pray, that is prayer. And it sounds like that no matter where you go with the company, whether it's now or in the next 10 years, it's like that is the core habit, the core experience that you're going to continue to kind of hone in on, leverage, and just make better and better and more rich, whether it's through single player mode or multiplayer mode within the app.
Yeah. And how many ways can we get people to pray every day? Like every one of we're making a bunch of podcasts now. We have a whole slate on the way, right? Because the first one was so successful. We'll end up launching like 7 to 10 more in the next 6 to 12 months. But every podcast we do, Matt, starts with a prayer. And like there's no podcast that do that, right? That's not even a thing. Like we invented that as a podcast format, right?
No, it's good. You got to do something different, you got to stretch people a bit and be known for something. So you're inventing your own format, and I think that's why it's working. In terms of, to switch gears here, I know on, the personal brand side, you're one of those people that I think thinks through everything super intentionally. You don't just happen to get into something. Like you were saying, you're very you kind of scan things, you do your research, but when you have conviction behind it, you go full force. I know with your personal brand, that's been something that you've kind of oscillated on. Sometimes you're, I'm going to go all in, and sometimes there's some hesitancies. I'm curious, how do you think about personal brand?
For me, I think of everything that I do on the business front in a mission, team, self framework. So mission means essentially customer first, right? Team means company second. Self means me, Steve, the CEO, or really Steve, just the dude from SoCal. Right. So from a mission perspective, our mission at pray.com is to grow faith and cultivate community so that we can leave a legacy of helping others. And usually the team perspective boils down to this very complex formula. You ready, Matt? Revenue minus expenses equals profit. Okay. Anytime someone's talking about the company, they'll give you all this other stuff that's not revenue minus expenses equals profit. Usually that's the primary driver, right, for the company. For myself, it's got to be something that I truly enjoy, something that I would do for free. So every time I approach the kind of personal branding thing, is this something that I'm doing first and foremost, customer first, right? Is this in alignment with the mission? If it's not, pass. Second, is this in alignment with my team? Really, my team being pray.com and pray.com shareholders, right? Is this in alignment with revenue minus expenses equals profit? If not, pass. And then third, is this something that I want to do personally, that I would love to do, and that I would do this for free? If not, pass. And a lot of the ideas that I've had around pushing into anything that's promoting myself personally, they just don't pass the test. In most cases, they don't pass the test, right? So Bible in a year, is it helping us grow faith and cultivate? Yes, it is. Bible in a year, is it helping us do the formula revenue minus expenses equals profit? Yes. Bible in a year, would I go dedicate my free time to go make Game of Thrones meets Matt Chandler for the Bible? Yes, I would, right? I would do that. Okay, cool. Mission, team, self, check. So anything that's personal brand, it's just a lot of times it's hard to pass that framework for me. I am launching a podcast called Relentless Hope, and that's going to be my new podcast. Yeah, I'm dropping it in a couple weeks in January. So, at the time of this recording, it's Friday, January 6th, 2023, first podcast of the year for me and for you. So grateful to be here. But Relentless Hope checks all the boxes for us. It checks the mission, team, self box. And that's my first tiptoe into something that has my name on it, right? It's pray.com presents Relentless Hope with Steve Gatena.
There we go. I'm looking forward to that. This is your entrance. It's going to be awesome. I mean, I feel like this space, I know it's great that you're being so intentional about your personal brand and where you're, and how you want to position it and when it makes sense. I think it's definitely important to put, mission first, team second, and then yourself third. I think that's true leadership, like leaders eat last kind of vibes. And in terms of this upcoming podcast, it's going to be awesome to see you putting your face out there. And I think putting a face to the Pray brand, and also like this space where when you think of a lot of leaders in the, religion, church space, it's the pastors, not someone like yourself. So I think bring a new level of approachability.
What the podcast is about, Matt. I'm actually highlighting a mix of pastors, right? And customers that use the Pray app. So I've taken these dramatic, inspirational stories, of tragedy to triumph or rags to riches that are representative of our customer base, right? So nice. Pray.com, I try not to use jargon, but it's a media marketplace, right? Or sometimes it's called a marketplace-driven SaaS company, but it's kind of like Etsy or Uber, where we have the supply side, right? Instead of Uber drivers, right? Pray.com has pastors. And then we have the demand side. Instead of Uber riders, we have members, right? Like members of the church. And we're taking stories from both sides, from pastors and from members. And we're telling it in this first person narrative, dramatized style. So you'll have to critique the pod. Let me know what I need to improve on. And
no, I'm looking forward. No, it's your superpower, storytelling. And I think it's going to be exciting to see. I think that's a great spot. I feel like sweet spot with a lot of podcasts too. You see a lot of people starting with, whether it's like thought leadership or, a bunch of different renditions. But I think at the end of the day, with any business, if you can just start from the place of let's go and talk to key partners or talk to key customers and just tell their stories, that's a spot where the mission's going to shine. And there's a clear line of sight there too for it making a lot of business sense as well, because other people are going to identify with those stories. The people that are featured on it are going to want to share it with their friends, which are likely similar fish that will also come to your product. And so it's kind of a great place to start from what I know.
Matt, I'm surprised actually, because there are so many CEOs and entrepreneurs, like irrespective of the size of the company, right? You don't have to be like Bob Iger to go do a podcast. So you could just be, I'm a 3 to 5 person, smaller shop. Maybe you're doing like $500,000 a year in revenue and you want to scale to like 2-3 million. And honestly, one of the most powerful tools for these B2B companies, especially, is start a podcast and just go interview people in your industry that are representative of your target customer. Who are all the other executives that you can have on your show? And what are the themes that you can talk about that you already know about? Like, it doesn't have to be scripted. You don't have to fake it. Like, just be who you are, right? And connect with people and get them on the show. And I think that's actually a huge under monetized growth tool that people could use, especially in these B2B companies.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people too, when they're starting these things, they get really caught up in some of the vanity metrics of subscribers or views or downloads. But when you're playing in that space of just talking to your customers and talking, just with different partners, it's less about that. It's more about just this like hyper targeted network being featured on it, sharing it with their friends, and just creating that kind of like early, cult following amongst people that truly matter to your business versus getting caught up in all the vanity around it.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of times, and this is normal, right? This is normal for us to like get caught up with likes, or we get caught up with like the rankings on the charts. But I think that a lot of times you'd be surprised when it comes to that team formula that I talked about, that revenue minus expenses equals profit. I think a lot of times people would be shocked at which businesses or which podcasts or which niches are the most profitable. And there are areas like podcasting where the profits or the revenues are so opaque, like you just don't know. It's like, it's hard to look under the hood and see how are people monetizing their podcasts. And so you might look at the rankings and think, oh man, like this person's got like a top 10 podcast. They must be crushing it from a revenue perspective. And that might not be true. We're going to end up doing millions of dollars on our Bible in a Year podcasts And, some of the ways that we're monetizing, right, include going out and getting title sponsors for our podcast. So just connecting with a brand that wants to sponsor the show, going out and running programmatic ads into your podcast. So like if you put your podcast on YouTube, right, YouTube will inject ads. If you use Megaphone to upload your podcast, Megaphone will inject ads, right? So you can run ad revenue, but then also if you have a product or a service that you can sell, your podcast is going to drive leads, right? So you might have a customer lifetime value of $10,000 or $50,000 or $100,000. And it's like one episode of your podcast might have gotten you one customer, and maybe only 100 people heard your podcast, but you might have gotten one customer that's going to give you $10,000 over the lifetime of your business off of one show that only 100 people listen to, right? So I think that, it's important for us to remember that revenue minus expenses equals profit engine, and don't get too psyched out on the likes or the downloads or who you think's the most popular.
Yeah, you see that a lot because I think that, at the end of the day, the profit number is so opaque, and it's so hard to actually understand what that is behind, whether it's your favorite Twitter accounts, Instagram accounts, podcasts, YouTube channels, whatever it may be. So the main thing that you can see is a subscriber count, follower count, whatever. And so it's easy to kind of get lost in that trap of thinking that that's the competition and that's where you're trying to grow, or getting on that hamster wheel, when if you can take a step back, there's oftentimes some of those are smaller, more targeted accounts with a real strategy behind them are the ones that are really pushing real business value versus ones that maybe just hitting viral bangers every week or so, but not driving actual real results through from kind of your rented audience, owned audience to monetized audience. So yeah, it's important to know which game you're playing and not get lost in the vanity game.
Agreed. 100%.
Last gear to go through here that I'm always curious on. So we chop it up around our own sort of goals, systems, habits all the time. And we were both sharing a bit of inside look at one another's master plans for 2023. I think we both have some big goals for this year. And I was really kind of blown away by your approach to goal setting for your years. And it seems to me to be something that you've refined over many, many years. Based on just the intentionality that it looked like that was behind it. We don't need to get into all the details, but I'm curious to understand your sort of goal setting system as we approach 2023, what I'm calling Jordan year. For me, it's all about mastery, dominating my niche, just kind of, being just the ultimate competitor and leader. And I'm curious, as you're approaching this year, what's your kind of theme for the year, and how are you sort of distilling on the personal side of Steve, your goals?
So my theme for the year is relentless hope. That is my theme. And I create a mantra too. Like normally this is like the first time I think I've ever, publicly told somebody like, hey, I have a theme and a mantra, right? And my mantra for the year is the best is yet to come. The best is yet to come. And a lot of that, Matt, has been driven by 2022 was a rough year for me. It was a rough year for me. I'm married, right? And my wife and I, we had a dog, TJ, that we had to put down like right before Christmas. And TJ was about 16. So that was devastating for us. Yeah. We don't have kids yet. We've been trying to get pregnant, and it just hasn't worked out for us quite yet. And we really want to have kids. And so, that made the year hard, and it made the TJ, putting our dog down even harder. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I think that one of the lessons that I learned this year was really for me to lean into my faith, and faith is the most important category for me. It's the most important category. Leaning into that and applying that relentless commitment that I have, right? That's like a natural part of my personality, applying that to my faith and, being hopeful for the future and continuing to believe that the best is yet to come no matter what I go through, and then sharing that hope with others, right? being there for my friends, especially when they're in a tough time. Like by the end of 2023, I want to be the guy, Matt, that you call on the worst day of your life. When the worst thing that's ever happened to you, like I want to be the guy where you're like, dude, I need to call Steve right now. And like, I don't know what he's going to say, but he's going to help me get through this. And so that's my primary goal for 2023. And I've themed it Relentless Hope. My mantra is the best is yet to come. All the other stuff, like, you know, I got all the superficial stuff, right? Like getting fit, you know, growing the bank account, like all the stuff that people do, right? We all do the same stuff, like, but
six pack, a fat bank, and relentless hope.
That's
what we're
it,
going
dude.
for.
That's it. That's it.
And so on the faith side of things, like to dive into that, I'm curious. I'm actually reading a book right now, Dale Carnegie's How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. He's been just like a classic sort of mentor I'll listen to in his Audible books, and just constantly kind of like helps me shift my mindset, reframe things. And there's a whole part of the book around, just the amount of just amazing leaders in history that, you know, and even business leaders that have used prayer and found prayer to help them get through just the darkest days. I know, like, I think it was Morgan Stanley leaving, you know, Wall Street midway through the day to go to our local chapel, spend his half an hour midday to say his prayers and connect with his faith, and then kind of go back and get things done. And they go through tons of examples in the book. I'm curious, like, when it comes to, you know, your darkest days and when you're going through, whether it's having to like put your dog down, which I know is like a really close, you know, it's like a friendship. How do you kind of like rely on your faith to get you through those sort of moments? Like, what does that look like?
So for me, it's like, I'm like this like achievement oriented person, right? That is relentlessly committed to things. So one thing that I committed to maybe 7 years back, like 6-7 years ago, is just waking up in the morning and praying, right? And praying and being thankful and grateful. And so I do that every morning. That is just like a cornerstone habit of my life. I just do that in the morning. And that, you know, sometimes I come and I'm like grumpy when I do that, right? Like sometimes I'm calm. Sometimes I'm stressed. Like, I wish I could tell you I had this like perfectly even keeled like situation happening.
Sometimes it doesn't look so good.
It's a hot mess, bro. Like sometimes it's a hot mess, right? So like that's the real of it. But I do it every day, just like brushing my teeth. And I'm like, hey, this is like a thing that I do that I'm gonna do, and that's gonna be like this like anchoring habit that I can just like hold on to. I would say that's like the start of it. Right. Another part, and I haven't even told him this in person, but the person that I call, and it's the worst day, is one of my co-founders, a guy named Matt. And you got to meet Matt. He was the guy that wanted to invent the Viper Horn product with John Fiorentino. Big shout out to John from Gravity Blanket and Matt Potter from Homestack, who is also my co-founder of Pray.com. By the way, be on the lookout for their new product, Viper Horn. Maybe John will come on your podcast, Matt, and tell the world about it. But Matt Potter is the guy that I call. And he is somebody that grew up a super strong Christian. He's from like this really great family. He's the most empathetic, the kindest, and really in these tough situations, the most wise person that I know, at least that's our age. And I call Matt, and you know what? Like, he always has the right thing to say. He always has the right vibe. He always makes me feel like I'm loved, like I'm supported, and always gives me the tools on how to share love and support others in those moments. So like Matt is somebody that I really look up to. And, you know, he's also a mentor of mine as well as my co-founder. So huge shout out to Matt.
Shout out to Matt. No, I love the approach too. I think that whether it's prayer, meditation, it is very similar to like brushing your teeth, right? It's like mental hygiene, and taking those moments, whether it's 1 minute crawling out of bed, super grumpy, or, you know, looking much better and feeling good about yourself. But no matter what it is, it's that kind of that habit, that ritual you can put in your day to kind of stay grounded and stay centered, which is oftentimes, I think, really hard to do as entrepreneurs like us that are super achievement oriented. We're relentless. We kind of are constantly getting after it. And oftentimes we'll put others and other needs before ourselves. So, I think it's super important. Well, with all that, Steve, it's been unbelievable here having you on the first ever Mac Ray show. Appreciate your vulnerability. Appreciate your friendship more than anything. And
Matt, I want to know two things that I want to know.
Fire away.
One, what's your off-stage beat? Off-stage beat. And if you don't know what that is, I'll tell you. And then two, like, how do we close this show? Do you have like a sign off? Is there like a, that's the way the cookie crumbles? You know, like, what's the closeout here? Like, what? And then maybe there's a third one, which is like, are we throwing in like background music? Are we going to get like, are we going on Audio Jungle to get like a little like sound bite, like opening sample music? Like, what's going on here? So like offstage beat, how do we close this thing out? And then like, what's up with the music scene, dude? Like, how over the top are we going?
So I'll deal with those in reverse order. So music scene, I have a good buddy, Roxy, who I've known for a decade, met him through Burning Man.
Shout out to Roxy.
Yeah. And was going to get Roxy. I was watching and binge watched The White Lotus. I don't know if you've seen this at all.
I have.
Over the holidays, went from episode 1 to just crushing it all. And there's
Is that why you're like permanently in a tropical paradise now? Like, did you get inspired from like season 1 when they're like in Maui or wherever?
No, I was already here when I started watching it, but I was watching the series and some of it was like feeling, I don't know what you call that, like deja vu a bit. So yeah, while watching that though, there was just this one song during the show, I think like the second season, that just like got stuck in my head. And then when I was thinking about reaching out to Roxy to get like some intro music kind of going on, I'm like, I should make it sort of similar to that song, you know, like kind of like a Hawaiian sort of, I don't know what you call it, luau sort of vibe. So just keep it tropical, you know, we're in tropical destinations,
dude, I'm into
tropical
it.
shows. Yeah. So got to keep it sort of tropical and fun. In terms of offbeat vibe, right? Is that what you're saying?
Offstage
like, what do I do?
Beat. Do you know
what does that mean?
Okay,
No.
So an offstage beat is it's like a description of your character that you are in the show, right? So like it's a term that they use for like actors in plays, right? So your offstage beat might be, my name is Matt Gray. I am a soulful, caring entrepreneur that wants to help my audience find new frameworks that they can apply to their business. I just made that up. That was like totally freestyle. So if that, is garbage, throw it in the trash. But the point is you read your offstage beat before you go into your show.
Right.
And then that's like who you are as a host, right, of your show.
Makes sense. So I think the offstage beat, that's something that, I think you're circling around it. I think for me, it's been building businesses for the last 12 years, been through a lot of pain, agony, and had a lot of major breakthroughs going through it. And my goal with this show is to share those learnings that I had to learn the hard way and give people the systems, the processes to build their community, brand, and audience and do it faster than I have. So, we need some work.
Can't wait to find out where the offstage beat lands with your primo copywriting skills.
Primo copywriting, and then the Hawaiian music. It's going to be just primo. Yeah. So,
and then what's our closeout? Like, what's the sign off?
I was thinking, with all this stuff, I was looking a lot at, how Joe Rogan does it and other pods I listen to, and it just seems to be more casual. It doesn't need to be this whole crazy sign off thing. I think it's just more of like, hey, like, let's crush it this weekend. I'll see you on Saturday kind of vibe. And, that's that.
Maybe that's it, dude. Maybe it's just like, I'll see you on Saturday. That literally could be a informal sign off. You know what I mean?
One of the most epic sign offs. So maybe I just got to shout out to Fine Ice Cream in Puerto Escondido where I am. I'll go to ice cream, more often than I should probably. And when I'll go get my 3 scoops of cheesecake ice cream.
Dude, 3 scoops of cheesecake ice cream. Who are you?
Oh, beast mode. I go, if I'm going to do anything, I'm going to be relentless here, Steve.
That's it, dude. Like the 1900 calorie 3 scoops of cheesecake ice cream. Let's go.
All right. You don't need to make me feel guilty about this. This is not the way I was hoping to sign up.
Dude, that's okay. You're shredded. You got like a 6-pack. You're surfing every day. Like you crush that cheesecake ice cream.
That was the confidence I needed. Thank you. So to continue the story, when I get these 3 scoops of cheesecake ice cream and I have my conversation with them and, we just catch up and just, it's just a great relationship we have there. I tell them, have a good evening, hope you guys have a great day. And they always will say, okay, we'll see you tomorrow. And I just think that's such a good sign off, for a business or
dude,
any person.
They're
it's
training
like,
you.
Yeah,
they're training you for the subscription buy, right?
I'm like, it's so genius. It's so genius. It's just like, no matter what, it's just like, okay, we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, so maybe that's it. We'll see you tomorrow.
That's it. All right.
Awesome. Well, Steve, see you tomorrow. Thanks for coming on.